Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live and I'm Cyril Stober. Tonight, we focus on the causes, the impact, and how to overcome economic adversity. Now, the global economy has dominated international politics owing to negative growth indices affecting various sectors, with countries facing severe shocks like currency devaluation, energy crises, food shortages, inflation, and a diminishing will to foster mutually beneficial relations, especially in areas of comparative advantage. Now, Nigeria is not exempt from these harsh economic times, but existing policies and periodic reviews aim at cushioning the shocks to some of the very critical sectors. Now, to put Nigeria's economy in perspective in relation to the impact of the current global challenges and performance index, we have assembled some experts from different sectors. But before we go into the discussion, let's see this report by our business desk correspondent, Musa Abubakar.
Purchasing power of those people is diminishing as the cost of goods and services continue to soar in Nigeria. The National Bureau of Statistics' latest inflation showed Nigeria's inflation rate hit 65-month high at 18.6% in June 2022.
There's been a lot of challenge with the managers of the economies of the world, even in developed economy. And Nigeria is not an isolation in this particular. If you check the Federal Reserve, the US Federal Reserve, the current inflation, the current interest rate is about, if you go, that is in the last 28 years, the highest. If you go back to the UK, you will see that the Bank of England is actually grappling with an inflation which has been the highest in the last 40 years. And for 5 consecutive months, it actually had to increase interest rate.
Is a worldwide problem attributed to supply chain disruptions caused by COVID-19 and further exacerbated by the Ukraine-Russia war, leading to rising energy cost, high cost of fertilizer, and disruption in wheat supply.
Food crisis is a real worry, and it's not just about this year. I think it might be about next year, even beyond that. And the reason I'm saying that is if countries are not able to get fertilizer to plant the next crop, those that need fertilizer, then yields are going to be lower. There will be less supply in the world across the board of all types of grains and food. If we are not able to evacuate the 25 million tons or thereabout of Ukrainian grain that is presently stored, and the harvest is next month for another 25 million tons, then that's going to be really, really difficult for the world.
It's a cost of living crisis for many, but monetary authorities are not without plan to address inflation and to boost export in a bid to strengthen the naira.
Committee resolved to increase the MPR by 100 basis points from 13% to 14%. Members were conscious of the fact that output growth remained fragile. However, not containing inflation now could erode the moderate gains achieved in improving consumer purchasing power and thus worsen poverty levels for the vulnerable populace.
But it's also important.
On the fiscal side, the target is to widen the tax net and reduce cost of governance. The International Monetary Fund is urging countries to prioritize bringing down inflation, provision of social safety net for the vulnerable, and containing rising death.
All right, that report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let's start off by introducing our guests. I'd like to welcome to this program Dr. Kayode Okwefa. He is a mobility expert and executive director, Center for Sustainable Mobility and Access Development. Dr. Okwefa, thanks for being with us here.
Good day.
All right. We're also joined by Alhaji Idris Shuaibu Mikati, Chairman, Institute of Directors, Center for Corporate Governance, a former banker, member Dangote Group, and an expert in banking and finance. He is a fellow Institute of Directors. He joins us from our Lagos Network Center. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Good evening and thanks for having me.
Okay. Let me also welcome to this program Professor Ken Ife, a development economist. He joins us via Zoom from London. Prof, good evening.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Okay. As we always do, we acquaint you with the procedure of this program, and you also know that at the appropriate time you can get to be part of the discussion in the studio. The lines will be on air. But for now, we will start off. When it gets to that time, we'll remind you of the procedure when you can be part of the discussion in the studio. For now, let's start off this discussion. And seeing that we have a development economist with us tonight, let's ask Professor Ken Ife to put for us in true perspective the state of the Nigerian economy. What has been the major challenge? If we take aside corruption since independence, what would we say are the major factors that have been working against what many might see as the economic growth of the nation's economy, of Nigeria, given its population and its resources?
First and foremost, as you know, is the pervasive insecurity that is present in all the 6 geopolitical zones. And the first impact of it is loss of business confidence, investor confidence in the economy. They can see how they will be investing in an economy and risking their lives and also risking their properties. So they are taking a backseat. But there are many other factors in the air about why investors are beating a retreat from investing in Nigeria. But we also have the domestic investors are also feeling the heat. And don't forget that domestic investors are very, very paramount right now because we are having vaporization of FDI, foreign direct investment, and also portfolio investments. And we are even having a significant drop in the diaspora investment, remittances, which is also being helping. Now, the second area to look at, apart from what food security is causing, is structural factors that we still haven't been able to get on top of. We know how chronic shortage of power and the damage is doing to the economy. Manufacturers are complaining, 77% of them says that they just can't produce. And then you have transport costs that is so high, that is pushing up input costs. And then you also have studies that show that 66% of our manufacturers are actually saying that they are using their own power 90% of the time. So that tells you one part of the story. But I think the one that is really bringing us to the cliff is the energy. The energy exacerbated by the role of NNPC at this current moment. And the fact that Nigeria's economy is still essentially an import-dependent economy. And what that means, in effect, is that our economy is on the transmission belt of global supply chain. And that implies that anything that happens anywhere in the world, whether it's COVID or Ukraine war or America-China showdown, trade war, all of them affect Nigeria. You are going to ask me the question, if we are producing gas and fuel and crude, as Russia is doing, why would Russia affect us? The fact of this is because we are an import-dependent economy, Russia is supplying 40% of gas to Europe and turning down the tap. Whatever they produce in Europe, we are going to import, will come in with imported inflation. So that's the catch-22. And then, of course, you have grains. We have the grains from Ukraine and wheat, and we are consuming bread. So the fact that we are on that trajectory makes us so vulnerable. And these are just some of them. A lot more to talk about, because the foreign exchange is a big dimension that is, firing the so we'll come back to this, I believe, over time.
All right. So, Prof, in very simple terms, what it means is that when the world sneezes, we catch a cold. There's no two ways about it, right?
Well, I think so. And our diversification index is just one compared to many countries that have as much as, 7 in the case of Cote d'Ivoire and South Africa. So all of those, if anything happens on one, then on one item, then they can get the counterbalance from the others. But we're so okay. 70% to 80% of our forex revenue is coming from crude and gas. So what that means that all the things that we have to buy, import from outside, are so hopelessly dependent on that supply mismatch. And then if you look at last year now, NMPs have not been sending any dollars. They usually should send about $3 billion to Central Bank, but they haven't been sending. For the whole of last year, and you saw how JP Morgan delisted us from overnight weight because they said, how can we be getting money and they can't see it in this? So that's that. Although they are now claiming that they have put in 2.something billion, but if you take out the real one that actually gets sent is about 1.86 billion, divided by 6 months, only 300 million, compared to $3 billion that you should have been coming in all the way from 2014, sometimes up to $3.4 billion. So it is difficult. If you know how to describe it, it's very, very difficult. The other methods, other ways of getting dollar are just not there. The diaspora remittance has gone down. It used to be at peak of 26 billion. Now it's only about $100 million a week. It's about over 5 billion. Not anywhere near what it used to be. Foreign direct investment is gone. The portfolio is gone because America has reflated their currency in January, mid-January this year. The basket of index, the USD basket of index, which measures USD across Japan, Euro, and China, all of them, it was about 87, it was about 94.5.
Okay.
The last week, it was about 107. And next, going forward, it's going to go to about 50. So the fact of it's over 12%, the reflecting of that currency, every country that has anything to do with America is catching the code.
Okay.
And dollar is zero, just 1-to-1 with euro. And so we're taking that hit. Unbelievably, we are. So there are many things that are coming into this equation that, is simply because we can't balance what we are getting in from what we are being demanded. CBN spends $1.8 billion every month. That is what they should be spending, compared to over $4 billion that is being requested by the market. And they can't even get the 1.8 billion. So, and then people will simply turn and say, do magic. What magic? Print dollar. We can't do that.
All right, Prof. Let's go back to Lagos and go over to Alhaji Idris Shuaibu Mikachi and put the same question. When you heard Prof, there are so many things responsible, and it would seem as if these challenges are almost insurmountable.
Mr. Stover, I think, to say the least, even though I'm not a Chelsea fan, impossible is nothing. These challenges, indeed, are not insurmountable. If anything, with willpower, with courage, and with the level of intellectual pedigree that God has blessed this country with, these challenges are indeed nothing. If you look at the trajectory of Nigeria's economic history, if you like the political economic history of Nigeria, let's dimension it from, if you like, pre-independent, independent, post-independence, and the military years, and, down to the democratic dispensation that we are. Prior to independence, we were just producing raw materials to export to colonial masters. Post-independence, 1960, 65, thereabout, this country continued that economic model by just producing raw materials. Is it groundnut? Is it rubber? Is it cocoa? even the tin and columbite, as well as the coal that we produce from Enugu, we're just transporting, raw materials to, developed countries to feed other economies. Fast forward post-independence, what policy, what industrialization policy did we pursue? What economic development policy did we pursue? Well, basically, if you like, we had what was then called import substitution. We were trying to have semi production capacity, and the idea was the high tech that we didn't have, either the knowledge or the know-how to do them locally, we import them. And then semi-production of kind of small, light, raw materials that we need to process, like maize, groundnut, rubber. That's when we had the likes of Dunlop, Michelin coming into Nigeria, and the likes of Cadbury, Nestle coming into process, our cocoa into chocolate and what have you. Fast forward after that, because there was a dominance of foreign, companies, foreign-owned companies, the military era then came up with, indigenization decree. That indigenization decree, nearly, dealt a mortal blow to quite a number of industries. You wanted Nigerians, or the government then wanted Nigerians to own companies and then own the production. But there was no interrogation of the level of capacity, financial capacity, knowledge capacity, technology capacity of Nigerians, whether or not we were ready and able to step in that, ecosystem that we wanted the foreigners, to excuse us and give Nigerians a chance. Years over years, Nigeria has had some of the best policies, whether industrialization policy, education policy, economic development policy, health policy, name it, anything. But what we lack are fundamentally courage to implement the policies. We do have the manpower and the technical know-how, the brain to implement, but we lack the courage. To worsen the situation, until very recently, most government organizations don't even have a department that generally we call M&E, monitoring and evaluation. We have a policy, we implement the policy, but we never follow up to see what are the outcomes of these policies and what are the side effects of the outcome, or how did we manage in terms of input-output relationship. Till this moment, Mr. Stoba, we have annual budget. I bet you no government has ever taken a critical look at the implementation of the budget, not just in how much was spent. You don't need to budget, for example, 7 trillion naira and say, oh, I've been able to spend 6 trillion naira, and you say you have done monitoring and evaluation of your budget. What were the projects that you funded with the 6 trillion that you spent? What are the impact of those projects that you have spent the 6 trillion naira on? What did you aim to gain in that direction? Narrowing it down to economic issues. Fundamentally, this economy is lacking technology. Till now, we do not have a vibrant steel industry. There is no country that will have economic development when it does not have a active steel plant. Again, we have had series of policies, for example, on, say, cement production. Until former President Obasanjo rolled out a policy that we cannot and we must not be importing cement, that was when we started having a situation where we limited the quantity of cement we are importing. Today, to God be the glory, because we implemented that policy to the letter, we are now a net exporter of cement. The fertilizer, our dear professor and elder brother Ken Ipe alluded to. Today, we have a Dangote fertilizer. On the average, in the last 2-3 months, most probably about 40 to 100, ships, each one not taking less than 40,000 metric tons of fertilizer, urea, and the other fertilizer, brand that the Dangote petroleum fertilizer plant produce. We are exporting.
Okay.
If we have dogged policy implementation, this country can be self-sufficient in food production. This country can be self-sufficient in quite a number of other items that we produce. Mr. Stover, can you imagine how long we have been exporting sesame seed, ginger, and other raw materials that the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has been given, export expansion grants to companies that are exporting these raw materials. And because there is no regular and rigorous implementation of the policy, you don't see any processing plant of even cashew nuts. How do you possibly run a system where we are not nationalistic, we are not patriotic, we don't even appear to care less about this country?
So I suppose this ties in with what you hear on a regular basis, that it's not so much as the absence of the policies, but the will to carry through and actually put those policies to work for the economy. But we'll return to you because you mentioned a number of key factors. Some of them, of course, the fact that cement is being exported. We'll return to that shortly and find out that a country exports certain goods and products, yet there's still a scarcity within its borders. But we'll talk about that later. Let me come over to another of our guests who's been here, Dr. Kayode Okpefa. You are the mobility expert, and so many things have affected the economy. Global crises and even internal local challenges have also exacerbated the situation. One of them, of course, is the fact that you hear people say it's not just the economy that is almost immobile now. The entire country is grinding to a halt. Immobility, it is. You're the mobility expert.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I believe Professor Ife has made an extensive overview of Nigeria's current economic situation, while Alhaji Mikanti took a dive back into memory lane. And from the mobility sector, what we see is that if the country is not mobile, when we say mobile, if the factors of production is not mobile, all those situations will come into play. And that is why, if you look at the early days of the economic development of Nigeria, the plan was to link the areas of factors of production to the port.
Okay.
Now, that's what determines the development of the rail sector. And when the construction of roads starts, you have 6 major trans-African routes. And in most of the parts of Africa, it is the part that has to do with Nigeria that still remains unattended to the Lagos-Abuja route. That is the popular Lagos-Badagry, Seme, and Co route. Luckily, the African Development Bank is working with the federal government to get financing for that route. But basically, even if you produce and you don't have the means to move these products to where they will be consumed, even if you produce energy, you don't have the means to transmit the energy to where it will be useful. If you create a factory and the factory don't have access to raw materials, even if you have the ginger, you have all the agricultural products, you have the bitumen, you have all the raw materials, and you can't get them to the point of production at a reasonable cost, you are still working. So we have a huge infrastructure deficit in the mobility sector, and that also affects all these economic development. Beyond that, in the last few years, certain things have happened. I want to remain current now. The pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, actually screwed a lot of things up. Coupled with the Ukraine-Russia war, which some describe as being political, some people say it's economical, whether it's political, economical. These two situations have grossly affected the logistics chain all over the world. Now, this brings about the issue of inflation and the current situations. COVID came, reduced the ability to produce. Even when you produce, everybody stands still. And when the countries came back to work, the production level increases and there was no capacity to move them around the world. And that causes an increase in cost of freight. Increase in cost of freight translated to increase in cost of goods, and inflation starts all over the world. And then suddenly the Ukraine war came, affected the energy sector. With the energy sector affected, you have the prices of food growing up. Then you have prices of diesel, prices of PMS, prices of aviation fuel, and then the mobility sector became affected again. So what I'm saying here is that as long as we roll up all these economic indices, economic plans, economic policies, we also have to think about the mobility of the factors of production. As long as that is not put into place, we don't have infrastructure for road. We built just about 4,000 kilometers of railroad from 1908 to, let's say, about 2006. And between 2006 and 2022, precisely, let me say in the last 6 years, we have built 1,000 kilometers of, close to 1,000, between 800 and 1,000 kilometers of railroad. What that tells you is that after creating the first 60 years when we made the 4,000 kilometers, with the technology, with improved technology, like Elijah Bikanti said, we didn't do anything for almost another 30 years. And in the last 6 years, we've been able to do one. That means if we've been doing much, we will have achieved a lot of rail. And with the rail sector development, then you can move. The same thing happens in the petroleum sector. We have about 4,000 kilometers of pipeline. When did we build the last kilometer pipeline? Until recently that we started the AKK pipe route for gas. We didn't do anything. So the mobility sector that will have also created an impetus for economic development was largely neglected. And Professor Ife mentioned that when he touched on the issue of energy and infrastructure. So the infrastructure to allow for mobility, fluidity, and improved access of the economic dividends to the people is not there.
In the face of the absence of this base that you talk about, what it would mean is that if there are any deciding factors globally, then, as they would say, we would be just a sitting duck.
Sitting duck? I don't understand what you're saying. Sitting duck, right. Sitting duck.
Yeah, well, because since we had not developed this base that you talk about, anytime there's a distortion in the world...
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I get what you're saying. Well, it's just like Professor Ife said it. If the energy is a key factor. I'm not talking about security. I would focus more on the energy or infrastructure sector. If you don't have the infrastructure to improve to create an efficiency in your factors of production, what we have is that you will just keep rolling. For example, let me say you have a raw material somewhere in Zamfara, and there is no rail, there is no road connection, and there's a factory in Bauchi, very close to Zamfara down there, that needed this raw material. What was that? What would be the value of that raw material? It's useless.
Okay.
We can't get to Bauchi.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Okwefa. I understand that we've been joined by another of our guests, Dr. Muda Yusuf, former Director General, Lagos Chamber of Commerce. He joins us via Zoom from Lagos. Dr. Muda Yusuf, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
All right. I'll say you have the added advantage of having listened to the other discussants, and in this matter of economic adversity that we chose to call tonight's topic, which we're focusing on, and how global events coupled with domestic policies, actions or inactions have contributed to diminishing the economic fortunes of the country. And while there is a global challenge And while countries of the world are facing serious challenges, it is that worse for Nigeria because certain bases had not been developed over time. Let's hear your views.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good evening to Prof. and our dear comrade and Mr. Raji Mikanti. Well, just to complement what other speakers have said, there are a number of dimensions to the challenges, and of course, a number of dimensions to the, what you can call the solutions on the way forward. First, we have a major structural issue. Just to underscore what Prof. and comrades said. The structural challenges have been creating a major problem of productivity in this economy, a major problem of competitiveness in this economy. And it is extremely difficult for any economy to make progress if there is no productivity and if the production arm of the economy is not competitive. Because you need productivity and competitiveness first to be able to facilitate import substitution. Because one of the issues we have around here is the fact that there is too much imports or importation. But if those who are in production have been so constrained, have been so frustrated that they are producing inefficiently and at a very high cost, it creates a major problem for economic growth and for the economy. That is one. So those things ordinarily that we should be substituting in terms of imports, we are not able to do them. And one very glaring and very unfortunate example is our importation of petroleum products. Look at the billions of dollars that we spent on the importation of petroleum products. We have 4 refineries. We have the opportunities to create an environment to allow more investors to come into that space, to invest in refineries, to invest in petrochemicals, to invest in gas development. All the countries in that space now are smiling. They are making a whole lot of money. Their reserves are overflowing as we speak. And these are resources we have been endowed with. But because of policy issues, because of policies, political issues, corruption, we have not been able to optimize that. And that is part of the thing that has brought us into the mess we find ourselves today. Look at the amount of money in dollars that we are now spending to import petroleum products. Look at the vulnerability it has created for our economy. We are now lamenting like other non-oil producing countries, when we should be celebrating. So, those of the segments in production is a major issue. Then we have the issue of policy. Because the challenges we are faced with, some of them are external, some of them are also domestic, just as you said. We have policy issues around our foreign exchange policy, which is compounding the problem of foreign exchange scarcity. We have serious liquidity challenges in the foreign exchange market. So that if you talk to most investors today, the number one problem that they face is the scarcity of foreign exchange. The liquidity. I'm not now talking about the depreciation. There are two different things. The depreciation of the exchange rate is an issue. But the bigger issue now is the liquidity. Such that if you need just $100,000, $50,000, the best you can get now in the official window is just about 20% of that. So how do you want people to function? Sometimes people don't even mind the rate, but the policy environment has caused liquidity to almost dry up in the system. And when you move to the parallel market, before you know it, you'll be accused of one infraction or the other. Before you know it, the FCC will come after you. So the policy issue is key as far as our foreign exchange is concerned. Then there is also policy issue around our trade policy. The trade policy is too focused on revenue generation. When we talk about tariff, all that the finance ministry is looking at and the customs is whether the revenue target has been met or not. Meanwhile, in the process of chasing this revenue, they do more harm to investment and to the economy more than the revenue that has been generated.
Dr. Buda Yusuf, revenue
I feel more
generation.
pressure.
Well, but that's the target of many regimes, to improve revenue generation. Something is wrong about that?
No, Siri, let me explain this. Let me explain. There's a sense in which you push revenue generation to the extent that it hurts the economy. Take, for instance, some critical inputs for manufacturing. We need to look at the bigger picture. If there are some critical inputs for manufacturing, you need to grow manufacturing, you need to create employment, you need to export, you need to do a whole lot of things around manufacturing. You need to build an inclusive economy. Even the process of chasing revenue right from the beginning of the investment process. Sometimes many investments have gone under. And the thing about revenue is that if you allow investment to grow, ultimately revenue will grow. You don't start chasing revenue from the very beginning of an investment. You nurture investment, you let it grow, you still have opportunities for VAT, you have opportunities for company tax, you have opportunities for education tax, so many taxes that will come if you allow investment to flourish. So we need to look at the bigger picture.
Okay.
I'm not talking about just rushing in finished goods. No. We need to identify strategic sectors that need to be supported with our trade policy. Then, of course, we have policies around our oil and gas sector. Right now, we don't have any private refineries, apart from Dangote that is just coming up. For over 50 years of being in oil and gas, it's a policy regime that has discouraged investors. In gas or in refineries and all of that. These are issues about policy. Policy can do a whole lot, and policy doesn't cost money.
All right. We'll return to you and those other factors. You've spoken about policy distortions, policy challenges, but we'll return to you. But let me just quickly go over to Alhaji Idris Mikati. And you are the banker here, and a lot of Nigerians do not understand the matter of the forex, the foreign exchange. Now, the authorities have, in the last few days, carried out a number of raids. They've put some of the blame at the doorstep of bureau de change operators, the parallel market. And at the time, the CBN came out with a policy which it had to clarify at some point in time that people who were exchanging naira for dollars with an eye on politics. And most Nigerians didn't quite get that and say, look, if you cannot source the forex that you require from the banks, where else are you supposed to go? So you are the former banker. Put that in perspective for us, would you?
Thank you very much, Mr. Strober, for that question. I think the action taken by the Central Bank of recent, in my humble opinion, to my mind, is laughable. In the last 24 months, the Central Bank has not given money to any bureau de change to sell. Why are you attacking them? They are able to source their money from Nigerians in diaspora and from other sources, and they sell. And you are attacking them or sending the EFCC to go after them. What is the meaning of that? Mr. Stober and fellow discussant, all of us as Nigerians, we were living witnesses to the charade that has taken place in Nigeria in the name of primary elections by the major political parties. monies did change hands. There's nothing wrong in money changing hands. But what kind of money was changing hands? Dollars. Where was the central bank? Where was the EFCC when those exchanges were taking place? Where did these guys got the money? And yes, the banks may be, blamed for certain actions or inactions arising from the sale of foreign exchange. But when you approach a bank to import item, you complete what we call either Form A, which is for invisible transactions, or Form M, if you are importing, say, raw materials or, finished goods or even plant and equipment. But when you complete the forms, the banks you are approaching, the banks submit these forms to central bank. So like Dr. Yusuf has said, if the central bank does not supply the banks the dollars, where are we expecting, the banks to get the money? So for all intent, the banks are just conduit. They are just service providers. They take naira from you. They approach the central bank to buy dollars on your behalf. When and where the central bank allocates the dollars, then they give it to you because the allocation is coming in, yes, it's coming in Bank A's name or Bank B, but it is directed to a particular customer that has already applied. So I'm not, a lawyer to the banks, and I'm not trying to defend my one of my primary constituencies, but this is, the fact of the matter. I think Professor Ife has discussed excessively about that. Dr. Yusuf has also discussed about that, and quite a number of fora. The three of us, myself, Dr. Yusuf, and Professor Ife, we've discussed this issue, particularly appropriate valuation of the naira. Only this afternoon, I was reading a report. The value of the naira is said to be grossly, undervalued, which means we are looking at devaluation sooner rather than later. The real exchange rate is different from the exchange rate that the central bank sells dollars I and E window. Why, for example, why on earth should we in this day and age, in the 21st century, be having multiple exchange rates? Why should certain categories of Nigerians be tagged as privileged few and be giving exchange rate at a different pricing from the market? I mean, these are distortions that we can do without. The central bank itself is part of the cause of the devaluation of the naira. The intervention that the central bank has done in quite a number of sectors, be it aviation, textile, or the agri sector, how much of those interventions in terms of the loans were actually directed to the manufacturers or the actual productive sector of the economy? Quite a number of those interventions between you and I, they are just interventions directed to political farmers or political manufacturers. And even these loans are said to be partly bad. About 1.3 or 1.5 trillion naira is said to be bad. I mean, so these are what caused the devaluation. Today, instead of 400 naira to a dollar, probably the actual exchange rate should be around 650 naira to a dollar. And the central bank is urging exporters to bring in their money and sell. Why should I bring in my money and sell when I know you are not giving me an appropriate price? Am I a fool?
Okay.
I mean, the policy distortion we talk about, there has been period where we have had even policy somersault. The military era, particularly if I remember, during Babangida's regime, you will ban one item with the intention that Nigerians should get involved in producing locally, and then 6 months later, 1 year later, you unban the item. I could remember what happened in the case of vegetable oil because I was directly involved in setting up quite a number of vegetable oil crushing, and refining plant. And subsequently, there was unbanning, and then import came to only to frustrate local manufacturers. This country is endowed. This country is blessed. This country can and should take its rightful place. But we need basically 2-3 things. We need consistency of policies. We need the courage to implement the policies. We need to have the monitoring and evaluation mechanism such that those who deviate, there should be appropriate sanctions and punishment.
Okay, we'll leave it up there for the moment. We have a couple of reports. The first one we have coming from Lagos, and it is by Abolade Salami. Our first report tonight is coming from Lagos. Abolade Salami.
Lately has been exposed to various external economic forces that has proven somehow too powerful to be subdued, thereby weighing down performance and projected growth estimates. What the outcome of this global shock immediately brings to the table is inflation, as America and the United Kingdom currently operate between 9 and 6% inflation figures, which is the highest seen in about 40 years, while Argentina is riding on 70%, Turkey 58%, Ghana 31%, and Africa's largest market, Nigeria, on 18%. Going by these numbers, economic managers say the country is not doing badly.
If you look at the relative numbers, you can find that it appears we are not doing badly at all. And on the basis of this, we have seen the International Monetary Fund reduce global growth forecast from 6.1% to 3.6% for 2022 and 2023. And so here in Nigeria, we have also noticed that a lot of people all around the world are responding to this common global problem by looking inwards.
The global crisis that caused fears among investors in the country led to withdrawal of capital to the tune of over $100 billion in portfolio flows and $20 billion in equity flows, leaving emerging markets, including Nigeria.
What they call short and medium-term measures. The long-term measure is to build infrastructure and come up with policy that will incentivize direct investment or foreign direct investment to this country. Not just foreign direct investment, even local investment in the real sector of the economy, such that, one, the cost of production here will be as comparable, if not cheaper, than what obtains elsewhere. And that way, we're going to have a productive base that will create employment and reduce the little unemployment.
In sustaining the economic recovery push, both the fiscal and monetary authorities have taken some decisive actions and introduced policies such that are targeted at growing the country's non-oil export value chain to generate $200 billion in foreign exchange in the next 3 to 5 years, as well as the signing of some agreements to boost bilateral trade relations.
The African Free Trade Zone, it's a free trade agreement, is a great advantage that we can use in this regard. And I think that if we do that, we could actually begin to tend towards that $200 billion within maybe 2 or 3 years.
To address the balance of policy objectives and development in the global and domestic environment, the Monetary Policy Committee members, during the recently held meeting in Lagos, unanimously agreed that the most rational policy option would be to further strengthen its tightening stance on the naira in order to effectively curtail the unabated rising trend of inflation.
Well, back here at the studio, Dr. Peifa, the government invested a lot in railway development, almost 1,000 kilometers. Yes, for about 40 years, nothing was added to the initial network until quite recently. But the question here is, there are certainly new factors which probably were not envisaged at that time that are now slowing down the impact of rail transportation, for instance, the insecurity that we face in the country. You would know that since the attack on the Abuja-Kaduna rail line, that corridor has remained shut. So whatever movement of persons has been affected. Now there are also challenges, emerging challenges in the Lagos-Ibadan axis as well. Somehow, with the dwindling economic fortunes, a lot of people think that the expansions that are envisaged might not go as quickly as possible?
Yeah, thank you. Definitely, there are challenges now with funding, and but like Dr. Muda Yusuf alluded to, the issue of policy somersault. We, as of today, as we speak, the national policy on transportation is yet to be signed into law. It's not as if there are no policy known, but the document is yet to be signed. So if you look at not just the rail sector, because you have to look at the rail, you have to look at the maritime, and then you have to look at the other logistic sector at the same time. In the area of the rail sector, there is no reason why we shouldn't have gone far, except that there are policy somersaults, and as such, with less certainty sometimes. But that should not deter us. There are private-public partnership options, even though it's very rare and tough in the rail sector. But with the likes of, if I can mention names, the Dangote, the BUA, and most of these are heavy manufacturing and industries. The Ajakuta Steel, if you can come on board, you will see a lot of people who invest in the rail sector just to move their goods. The ABTL, the terminal operators, they will come in and invest in the policy function. You see, in every development in the transport sector, three things are critical. First is the status, the policies, the laws, and the regulations. The second one are the structures. And the third one will be the processes. But what we have now is that those three things are not fully on ground, and it's hindering development in that sector. And that is why government has to keep doing everything possible. And we must commend the current government and even the previous one, the Goodluck Jonathan government also made a lot of effort in the rail sector. But be that as it may, we have not done enough. So just like we have problem in the rail sector, you also have in the maritime sector. You have the Apapa port, you have the Tinkan port, and you have the Eastern port. Until recently, we started having the deep sea port. So if we have not gone into the Lekki deep sea port, Badagry deep sea port, and maybe the Ibom deep sea port, we will have just discovered that in another 5 years we'll be out of that maritime sector in the West African coast.
Speaking of which, ports development now, not to cut you short, speaking of which, there have also been developments in dry ports.
Yep.
As
deep sea ports.
Okay, but then there's also that aspect where the development of ports. I want to bring one particular case into point here, the Barrow port, for instance. If you do recall, today it doesn't look as if anything is going to happen because there's neither access in terms of roads or rail to that corridor.
I think that is currently being addressed, and I think the former Minister for Transport, when he said the ministry is not paying much interest in the Barrow port, a lot of people took him up on that issue, and that is exactly the issue. If he develops Barrow port, to where? From where? But but
shouldn't that have been something to think about before the commissioning we all witnessed?
Somebody during this discussion mentioned politics, policies, and corruption. So when it comes to politics, a lot of people want certain things done. If you look at the development of railway, it gives you a good insight as to how we missed it. When our colonial masters started the rail development, they look where the raw material is. They look where it is needed. They look at the seaport for the purpose of export or whatever, and they construct the rail lines into that. That's removing politics. So when you have politics, policies, somersaults or conflicts, you get things done whichever way. And that also explains the issue of refineries. If you want to side refineries, where do you side it? Where to be? The cost of transportation of the crude to the point of refining, you will put that into consideration. What do we have? So when we want to side something, you say one in one region, another in one region, another in one region. You start distributing things.
So that's politics.
Yeah, those are the politics that also affect some of the things we do.
All right, Professor Kenny, if you're still there with us, let's quickly go back to you in London. And from what the other discussants have said so far, at this point, we might begin to consider how to turn around what's happening.
Anyway, what's happening is a lot. I'm not sure which side to start. I know a lot has been said about Forex both from the policy perspective and the administration of it. But one thing I have to tell you is that this is price. When you look at monetary policy rate, inflation, bank interest rate, they're all price. Forex is price. And whenever you talk about price, basic economics, you look at demand and supply and see whether there's any chance you can resolve those and tell you where the equilibrium would lie. What I have to say to you is that there's no prospect as we stand now of these two meeting each other. They are all varying in opposite direction. You have the demand and the supply no likely to match. So you continue to have that disparity. I told you what we are getting and what we are no longer getting. We are no longer getting about 70% of that into the pot. We are only scratching around looking for 20%, which you can't find. FDI, you can't get it. Portfolio, you can't get it, because they are all choosing a better place to take their money to, which is America that has normalized that for monetary policy. America has raised their interest so they can earn more interest. America is the origin of their dollar. It's safe economy. They're moving it there. They can't trust our own economy to keep it here. There's a negative real interest rate here. You can't have interest. Somebody give you 5% interest when inflation is 18.6. That eats up all their money. So it is tough. We have to understand that it is tough. Then on the other hand, even when you are planning to get, looking for 1.83 billion to spend, you have demand of over $4 billion. And why is that? You come to the economy, you have speculation in our economy. Now, what the damage that speculation does is that people now expect that by the end of next month, Naira may drop to 800 Naira to $1. So what do? They scramble to look for Naira to go and buy dollar and hold it. End of next month, they will sell it and they make 20-30% profit for doing nothing, just by touching that dollar. So that's speculation. And then you have politicians, as you've already mentioned, looking for this money because they don't want to carry billions of Naira around, and armed robbers are chasing them. They give you one small envelope, that's better than giving you 3 billion Naira. So they're also looking for dollar. Then you have the importers. Remember, when central bank delisted those 34 items, it didn't ban them, or it didn't have the power to ban them anyway. It's the Trade and Ministry of Finance that should be doing something about that. But he said to them, I'm sorry, I don't have foreign exchange to give to you. So you go to find somewhere else. And they found where they're getting it. They go to Bureau de Change. And I have to tell you this, about 93% of the transactions on Forex happens around the official window. But there's this 7% on the black market that is causing all this wild cry and all of that. If you say float Naira, float it to where? It will just disappear the way the rocket that was designed by, I forgot whether it was India or China that did rocket for Nigeria, and it disappeared and we haven't found them again. That's what's going to happen. Because you can't find the coordinates that will make sure that you can see where you just can't find them. So what is going on is, and there's also dollarization of the economy. You know, there's some shops you will go, they have their prices in dollar. And you ask them, why are you doing this? Say, but I bought it in dollar and I'm selling it in dollar so that I know if I'm making a margin of $1, I know I will use it to buy another one. They don't know if I sell it in Naira, I don't know whether I can ever get the money. So that is their so you have there's so many issues on that side of demand. And then the RT $200 billion program Syria has launched gives us a ray of hope that we may, all things being equal, increase our revenue by focusing on non-oil revenue, forex revenue. And that would mean, okay, central bank is fine, we can step aside and then commercial banks can run with that program. But is it going to happen? It is happening, but we need more momentum, we need more injection in there. You can't get this if you don't invest. Please, let me explain something. You have to invest. Over the last 7 years, our economy has been more on the consumption side of our balance sheet than on the production side of our balance sheet. People still don't understand that you have to make an investment, and the investment will create wealth. That will create employment. Employment will create disposable income. With disposable income, you can pay for health, education, and reduce poverty sustainably. Look at what the 33 items the state governors have brought forward, that this is what the government has to do. Excellent. But I say to them, I'm still trying to find out which of them the states are going to do themselves, but that notwithstanding, where is the money to effect the change? If you want to fight corruption, you need investment. If you want to reduce cost of anything, any reform, you need money to invest to do that reform. If you're going to say salaries of people who are over 50 years, let them voluntarily retire, and then they can ease them out, and then bring more young people who are more technology adept, wonderful. But you're going to find money to give them when they want to leave. So it's no way you can go. You can't do any of them without money. And so when we begin to move in our discussion to solution, I'll have to tell you, the quickest place you can get money today in Nigeria is not by using all that tax. They say 10% state can charge 10% tax federal, 10% increase VAT from 7.5 to 10%, bring in extra 3% federal tax. They will take time to materialize. Today, we do not have that time. You are just on the cliff. If you default on any payment, all the chips will be down. So the easiest way is to move away, put a moratorium on borrowing, debt financing on our economy. Just have a moratorium on debt financing and switch to asset-based financing. Just try that. If Saudi Arabia is richer than most countries in the world, they needed $25 billion. They didn't go to World Bank or IMF. They said, tell me the value of Saudi Aramco. This is my oil company. They valued it at 1.8 trillion. 1.8 trillion. Please go and float. Give me 5%. He went to capital market and got 5% and got the money that they needed. And all I'm saying to you, I'm saying to everybody, NNPC is worth not less than $100 billion in asset. They say 59 or $60 net asset. If you just privatize only 10% to 10% will give you $10 billion, and you can stop the rot right now. You can just take 5 and reduce the debt. You can put some capitalization, development banks that we have here, Bank of Industry, Bank of Agriculture, Nexim, Bank of Nigeria. Give them, recapitalize them so that they are ready to carry this business away from central bank.
All right, you mentioned something about corruption. And at this point, that's where I want to take it to. And let's go over to Alhaji Shuaibu Mikati. The matter of corruption. This government came in vowing to fight corruption, and it was seen as one of the planks of this administration. A lot of efforts have gone into stemming the tide, but it would seem that there are other things that are fueling it. Not the least consumption pattern of Nigerians. And people wonder, with an economy that's said to be failing, you do find all kinds of foreign goods flooding the streets. Cars, you find structures. People are putting money into buildings that no one lives in. So how far with the anti-corruption fight?
Thank you very much, Mr. Stover. But before I get on to the corruption question, let me just tangentially touch about one or two issues that has been discussed. In the report you got from Lagos, I was so surprised. I'm restraining to use the word disappointed that Kingsley Obiora, the deputy governor of the central bank, will be saying our inflation rate at 18.6%, that we are not doing badly because we are compared with countries that have 31% or 20% or 25%. What was the inflation target for central bank? My last recollection was single digit, 9%. So if we are doing 18.6%, by simple arithmetic, we are doing terribly badly. Kingsley Obiora should please exercise some restraint in trying to be political in presenting some of these facts. Dr. Kayode did allude to the fact that certain projects needs not to be taken to one region or another. I'd like us to take a cursory look at one of the largest refineries we have in the world today is located around Singapore. Singapore does not produce oil, and Mobil producing owns that refinery. The market for the product that the refinery will be producing is in Asia. So the refinery was taken there. So crude is taken by ships to that. So sometimes for certain strategic reasons, you can cite project way out of the manufacturing, way out of the raw materials location rather. Taking the issue of corruption, Mr. Stover, I think there is no gainsaying that no Nigerian, including our dear father and President Mr. Buhari, that will not be disappointed in what has been happening in the country in the last 6-7 years. All of us, and I repeat, no Nigerian, male or female, young or old, that did not have an extremely high expectations of corruption coming down because President Buhari was quote unquote looked as a saint, and indeed he himself. The worst you can allude to Alhaji Buhari or Muhammad Buhari is probably nepotism, but corruption maybe not. But people under him, they have either betrayed him or he has not been able to deal a mortal blow in quite a number of those under him that have betrayed the trust and confidence that he has given to them. Indeed, if only we have the will and the courage to implement Steve Orosanya report to reduce some of the areas of government spendings, maybe some of these debts that we are carrying shouldn't be there. Maybe some of the corruption that is so prevalent will probably not be there. But Mr. Stover and fellow discussant, we're here, and the immediate past Accountant General of the Federation was reputed to have, mismanaged resources. Even the one that was appointed to take over him, even though he's still there, he is also being reputed to be having some discussion with EFCC. Is there any ministry today, any parastatal, that if you take it and x-ray it, you interrogate the expenses, despite the prevalence of institutions such as the Bureau for Public Procurement, the ICPC, Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, the EFCC, the NFIU, and what have you, almost everything is still happening in broad daylight. So the fight for, against corruption, the fight against bribery, the fight against, incentivization of processes, have we done any achievement? Maybe, to be generous, 20 or 25%. But we have the capacity and we can do better, and it is still not too late for the government to take a decisive look at what is happening in this particular sector so that history will indeed be fair, just, and equitable, and history may have leniency on our President Baba Buhari as far as this issue of corruption is concerned. Okay. These two twin sides or three sides of a coin: economy, insecurity, corruption. These are areas that the president did promise us, and not so much has been happening. We can forgive him on economy because exogenous factors has affected, the performance. But insecurity, come on.
All right. At this point, we'll take a short break. When we return, the phone lines will be open, and you can be part of the discussion in the studio. Stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. And at this point, we'll take our second report tonight. This is coming from Kanu. It's by Muhammad Ali.
From global recession to coronavirus pandemic, now war between Russia and Ukraine. These phenomena had adverse effects on global economy. For instance, in Nigeria, and particularly Kano, the commercial hub of the north, in the last 3 decades, successive administrations have been battling with challenges of microeconomy such as unemployment. These also result in low productivity from manufacturers, devaluation of the naira, and inflation, among other economic traits.
Serious inflation, serious unemployment, the productivity is very low, and again, the infrastructure is still not okay. Our electricity supply is bad. And if you cannot use electricity, the next option is to use diesel, to use generator. And it's also affected by this hike in price. So you see from every angle, the economy is not doing well. We find that government may not have enough revenue to fund its budget. So the ultimate thing is for government to go for a loan. And I think it has started reaching alarming rate that the debt service is becoming a problem in the country.
Another issue of great concern that will assist in stabilizing economy raised by experts is reviving the moribund industries in the state, which account hugely in Nigeria's economy.
If I were to advise one of the advisors of government, I will advise President to open importation of rice into this country. We need food, and our local farmers cannot provide adequate rice, and it is very expensive. I think it's high time government, even if they are going to embark on temporary policy, to open up and import rice into this country, because certainly there is food shortage.
Experts believe that Nigeria can get it right if the threat of insecurity is contained and critical sectors play their role in the nation's economic rejuvenation. Muhammad Ali.
All right, at this segment now, you can get to be part of the discussion. The numbers to call will be on your screen. We encourage you to take advantage of those numbers and call in. We always say this every Tuesday. If you call in and your call gets through to the studio, do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set. That's the way to avoid the hurlback or the echo. And we also encourage you to go straight to the point. Keep it short, straight to the point, and don't waste too much time on greetings. Just a mere hello would do. So we expect to hear from you, your views. Already we have a caller on the line, Solomon, calling in from Port Harcourt. Solomon, go ahead.
You're on. You're on. Say something.
Hello, Solomon. Are you there?
Hello, Solomon.
Is Solomon from Port Harcourt still on the line? Right, let's hear you, Solomon. Okay. Well, while Solomon sorts himself out, he might want to call back later on. All right. Is Solomon on?
In a platform, just bullet points, what are the measures that can make it possible for Nigeria to recover from this economic hardship within a given time frame, either in respect of manufacturing in terms of production and less consumption economy, or by injecting more funds into the economy, because as it is now, we are not growing. Nothing is happening. In fact, the economy has collapsed. As far as I'm concerned, economy has collapsed. So what can be done within a short time frame to be able to recover this economic hardship or adversity that we are facing today? I'm directing the question to Professor Ken. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, Professor Ken Ife, you probably heard Solomon from Port Harcourt. Any quick fixes? Prof, you have to unmute your mic. You have to unmute your microphone.
I'm sorry about that. I
Right,
think
okay,
at the moment,
fine. So Solomon from Port
we have
Harcourt
so
wants to
many-
know what can be done immediately.
Yes.
Any quick
yes,
fixes?
We have so many strong headwinds, and there are so many things that could be done. The governors have listed 33 of them. Any of them, a combination of them, will put us in a path of recovery. But you need money. You need investment immediately to do this. If you can't find that cash, you're going to run a risk of default. And that compounds the challenge that we have. So you got to find money. And that's why I was pointing you to where you can get instant cash. And then you start to unbundle the challenges that we have. We know we have productivity challenges. We're not producing. Our economy is very diverse so right now on the domestic front, but not on the international front. So we are not having that diversity of forex coming in. But we have diversity in the sense of the domestic economy. ICT is about 16%, trade is about 15%, others, agriculture is 23%. So we have a little room there. But we need to make sure that value addition will lift our production in the farm to value added and manufacture. So we need to bridge that gap so that you can, in doing that, you create jobs. And jobs are a very, very big embarrassment to us right now.
All right. Okay. Solomon got his answer there. Let's go back to Dr. Muda Yusuf, who is in Lagos. Yes, join us via Zoom from Lagos. So, well, Dr. Muda Yusuf, if we might extend it further. Oh, okay. Let's take this call from Justin from Calabar and we'll go to Dr. Muda Yusuf. Justin from Calabar. If you can hear me, go ahead with your question or comment.
Okay. My point is, I want to commend the analysts. They are really doing well. They are really saying the things that need to be done in this country. Honestly, the rate of poverty, the rate of hunger, the rate of economic failure in this country now is alarming. How I wish the people in the authority will hear and listen to them and take advice from what they have just said. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So let's go over to Dr. Muda Yusuf. How can this situation be turned around? People have asked, people have sent in questions. Nigeria is seen as a dumping ground for many products. How can production get going again? And how can Nigerian goods be on the shelves?
Yeah, thank you. Before I respond to that, let me emphasize once again that the current foreign exchange policy environment is one of the biggest problems that we have in this economy. Prof was talking about investment. This policy is impeding investment, especially investment that are foreign exchange denominated. It's also blocking the inflow of foreign exchange into the economy. Foreign exchange doesn't have to come from only oil. We have foreign direct investments. We have foreign portfolio investments. We have export proceeds. We have diaspora remittances. We have remittances from embassies, oil companies, and some other government parastatals. But if we maintain a rigid exchange rate, the way we are maintaining now, it will continue to create a barrier to the inflow of foreign exchange. And we need all the foreign exchange that we can get at this time. So my appeal is that the CBN should review its policy on this matter. Secondly, the current foreign exchange regime is breeding a lot of corruption in the official window. You need to interact with operators in the economy because there is a big gap. Why do you compare a gap of 416 to the dollar to almost 700 to the dollar? It's creating a whole lot of problems and corruption. So that now people prepare two checks, one official, one unofficial. It is not sustainable. And it's also discouraging even the exporters. Exporters have complained bitterly about this. That they bring the export proceeds, you say that they have to exchange it at 416. That is not fair. Is that the way to encourage the exporters? Even though we have this RT 200 where you give 65 or 60 naira. How do you compare that to almost 200 naira that they lose per dollar? So I think I need to emphasize that point because exchange rate is at the heart of international trade. Whether you are talking of import or export, whether you are talking of equipment or raw materials, whatever it is, it's at the heart of it. It's at the heart of capital flows. Capital flowing in and out of an economy. It's about the exchange rate policy. If you don't get it right, this economy will go down very fast. So I think I just need to point that out. About what we need to do, well, it's about the issues that you have mentioned. First, let me also highlight the fact that we have ways and means financing by the CBN getting close to 19 trillion naira. It's a major macroeconomic problem. It's affecting inflation. It's affecting even these exchange rates that we are talking about. So we need to ensure that even the CBN financing of deficits is done in line with what is in the CBN Act, so that it doesn't create further distortions within the economy. It's now about 19 trillion. That is highly inflationary. And these are some of the points that are even highlighted even by the governors in their recent proposal. Okay. I'm talking about...
All right, we'll just ask you to pause a while, Dr. Muda, Yusuf. Just hold on for a while. Let's get this call through. Derek, who's calling in from Abuja. Hello.
Hi,
hello, Derek.
Speaking here. Hello.
Yes, hello. Talk to us.
Yeah. You see, first and foremost, just to add to what the analyst is saying, nobody wants to invest in an economy. Okay. Yeah. Nobody wants to invest in an economy where they're not sure of repatriating the profit back to their country. So if you're going to encourage increase in our dollar deposit, you're going to be able to convince investors that they're not going to have problem repatriating their profit back to their country. If you invest $1 million, for example, into the oil, into agriculture, and then you make sales and you get profit, the question is, how do you get, the dollar equivalent of the profit back to your country? Now, if you're not sure if you're going to get how you're going to get it out, there's no point bringing it in. So the policy of foreign exchange in Nigeria is quite bad. It's not encouraging. And I think that's just to add to what the analyst is just finished saying. And secondly, the airlines, for instance, are finding it difficult to source foreign currency to bring in crude oil and even repatriate their profits. So we need to look at that as well, and also to encourage tourism to Nigeria. A lot of people are finding it difficult to visit Nigeria, and they're not spending the foreign currency in this country. And that's part of the reason why we are having dollar scarcity. I think we need to look at that seriously. Thank you very much for giving me this time.
All right. Thank you very much, Derek from Abuja. Dr. Kwefa, mobility is a squeeze on the airline industry, and aviation is groaning under these situations. That also is slowing down mobility.
It's not only slowing down mobility, it's slowing down the economy. Because once people cannot move freely, efficiently, and effectively from one point of production to the other, then we have problems. And this is global. And that's the first thing we need to understand. And it brings us to the point that we ought to do certain things to prevent this kind of situation. And we have to go back to those things. One, as long as there is conflict in Ukraine and Russia, as long as it continues, we will not be in position to determine the price of crude. Once that continues to be affected, the price of diesel, the price of PMS, and the price of aviation fuel and kerosene will continue to fluctuate. Also, in the aviation sector, most of the activities, operational activities are foreign currency based. And as long as Dr. Buda Yusuf said, the foreign exchange continue to be a disparity and people cannot really get the foreign currency to use, that problem. So we have to develop that. We have to develop our own system that we can maintain the aircraft here in Nigeria. And we can do a lot of things that we currently do in foreign currencies here in Nigeria.
That's long term, but people are thinking about a quick, at least some quick relief.
Talking about one of the key players in the industry, I got to know that some people are already involved in the MROs where they can start maintaining. And someone even told me that aircraft in the last 1 year have been maintained in Nigeria. So not only have this FDI, we need to develop our own local industry. We need to find a way to refine our own crude. We need to get diesel produced here in Nigeria. We need to get PMS produced. We need to get aviation fuel produced here in Nigeria, not dollar denominated. As long as we get into that situation, the problem in the aviation sector will continue. It's not that the aviation fuel is not available. I think that's a wrong impression. Say it's not like the issue is not scarcity.
What's the issue then?
It's just the cost.
Oh, I see.
Versus by the time you pay whatever it is today or tomorrow, you remove the cost of every other operational expenses, you are left with just, I think we're told it's about 12,000 naira or so. That is left on the ticket of about 70-something thousand naira. So it's because most part of the operational activities is dollar denominated. So as long as that continues, so we have to find a way in the mobility sector to make sure that we refine our own crude and we domesticate it. Number two, apart from refining our own crude, we need to also make sure that a lot of the productive sector, that is energy, that needs energy, we have to fix power. As long as those two issues are not fixed, we'll continue to talk on all these theories.
All right. Back to the phones now. Nelson is calling in from Calabar. Nelson, go ahead. Nelson from Calabar.
Good evening, Mr. Silva.
Right, good evening. Go ahead.
Great job. I really appreciate. Yeah. I've been hearing your good and wonderful presentation most of the night like this. But one thing I want to say, I don't know how many of the government experts that are here or the people that are in government who are in the right authority that are sitting down and watching this at this hour. Because this program, they are all fantastic. They are wonderful. I can listen to the analysts. They are doing a very great job. But my trouble here is how would this be channeled to the ears of those who are sitting in the ends of this affair? In fact, you can see it from the looks of everyone. Everyone is so concerned. The people sitting down so concerned about the situation we find ourselves. Most especially, the present cost of Nigeria today. Insecurity, go down to food production, go down to the construction area, you go down as far as to our roads, and even to the poor farmers. So I want to say that most of this program, we need maybe one or two ministers that are related to this area. Let us sit down. If probably this could be also be channeled to the ears of the appropriate authority to take action. In fact, we cannot help ourselves right now. We just really need help. We really need help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nelson from Calabar. Thank you for calling in. We're back in the studio, and we're looking at ways of turning the situation around, beefing up productivity, raising Nigeria's productive capacity, and of course, making the local currency, firming up the naira. Let's go to Alhaji Idris Shuaibu Mikati.
Mr. Stover, if you ask me, are there quick fixes in economic issues like these? To the best of my knowledge, they are very difficult to come by. Economic policies are like, agriculture. You can't plant a seed today and expect to reap it in the next 2 days, 1 week, or even in most cases, even 1 month. Yes, like I did say at the beginning of the discourse, impossible is nothing, but quick fixes are seldom, available in economics, spectrum. But one of those quick fixes that can come by just an administrative feat, by just policy pronouncement. One of them is the issue of addressing, the multiplicity of exchange rates. If only the central bank and those in authority at the apex, that is the presidency, could allow the central bank to take a critical look at the value of the naira and appropriately, situate it so that the real exchange rate disequilibrium that we are having right now can be addressed. That could signal a policy direction that may be able to attract portfolio investment into our capital market. In the last 2-3 weeks, 1 month, 2 months, 5 months, the Nigerian capital markets, in fact, the Nigerian exchange, the value, all share index has been depreciating, has been going down. One of which the reason is portfolio investment leaving our country. Once we fix the exchange rate, we are likely going to get that portfolio investment bank, and then the foreign direct investment might also begin to come back because there is then an alignment of the reality of exchange rate. Number two, also very closely to that, is the issue of implementation of the Steve Orosanya report. It just takes a pen, for Mr. President to sign an executive order that these, reforms should be implemented. By doing that, the cost of governance in this country could reduce by not less than 5%. Between 5 to 10% we could reduce cost of governance. Again, this is a quick piece. By the time you are saving cost, you will be able to save your expenses, and therefore, the borrowing that we are having today to borrow to pay salary, we may not have to do that. Thirdly, we also need to find a way. The aircraft fighter jets that we were told they were bought from, US, is it Tocano or whatever they are called? What are they doing? Why are we not seeing the impact of such purchases? We spent close about $1.3, $1.5 billion to bring in these aircrafts. Why are we not using them to decimate these bandits so that our farmers can go into the farm and produce, and by so doing boost agriculture and the economy could be boosted? Fourthly, the issue of our educational system. Believe you me sincerely, we've never had it this bad that ASU, the Academic Staff Union of Nigerian Universities, have been on strike, and the quality of the graduates from the universities owned by government, and they are the larger universities, is continuously dwindling. So instead of the country getting dividends of population, dividends of demographic, we are not doing that, and largely because the quality of our educational graduates are too low. So there is need also for government to take a cursory look at this sector so that a budgetary allocation can be enhanced. The issues brought forward by the ASU should also be adequately addressed so that they can get back to work and our children go back to classes.
All right, thank you very much. Let's get back to the phones. We have Balogun calling in from Lagos. Hello, Balogun. Balogun from Lagos.
Good evening.
Go right ahead.
Ibo Balogun from Lagos, please.
Yes, we can hear you. Balogun, go on.
I so much love the contribution of our analyst. And hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I want to bring my own contribution in the aspect of our refineries. I believe some of our people are refining in this nation. Maybe we might be looking at it from other angle of maybe illegal or illegal. But I still believe we can come in this aspect of trying to put these brains together and bring in resources to help these people and refine our own oil in this place and put things in order. I believe that in the area of this importing oil, what we already have here, and we'll take it. Some people will come here, they'll get it from us, and bring it back to us and sell it at a very high price to us. I think my own aspect of it is how do we come in this nation, helping our own people, getting things done in our own way here. And
all right, Balogun. Thank you. All hands must be on deck, what you're saying. Okay, thank you so much. Well, at this point in time, we'll begin to wind down this discussion. And I always put this question out to my guests and say, yes, the policies can be there, and the administration can enunciate these policies and pursue them with the political will which everyone has talked about. Now, in all of this, what is the place of the citizen, and what should Nigerians themselves do to assist in carrying through the policies? And when I say Nigerians, those who are in a position to actualize those policies and those who have to operate within the framework of those policies, and of course the ordinary folks themselves, what they should do in terms of supporting every move and every drive that should get the Nigerian economy back on track. So that's where we go to as we begin to wind down, and let's begin from Professor Ken Ife, who joins us from London.
They've been keeping faith with the very, very difficult circumstances. You saw what happened in the COVID era, where the government, both monetary and fiscal, joined hands to make sure that there's liquidity at the consumption side, so that we don't have a collapse in aggregate demand. And that helped to get out of recession, because it's not enough to be investing money on the output side and then you have demand suffer. So we had that balance, and 1 quarter we got out of it. But I think we're also seeing that despite the scale of insecurity that we have, Nigerians are not starving. We are not starving. Food security has not become a major crisis in Nigeria as it is in many countries, irrespective of the high level of insecurity and the contraction of the agroecological footprint. And also remember that we are not feeding only 200 million Nigerians. We're actually feeding 300 million, because we find that another 100 million Francophone countries in Niger, Chad, Mali, and northern Cameroon and northern Togo, they're all getting resources from Nigeria. We can't stop that because we are bound by the treaty, ECOWAS treaty, and there's nothing you can do. You can't place tax and duty on those unless you have a value addition. So we want to push the public and the farmers to begin to have more value addition, but that's policy and investment. that could make them do that. And we need a world level cottage industry so that you can actually act on those crops. You can't produce cassava is 80% water. You cannot transport it because there's the cost of transporting. Doesn't make sense, but you can dry them locally. The same with so many grains. And it's a very, very difficult situation that we are facing in our country. But in terms of, going back to the enabling environment, the environment, the impact the environment has on those, is the fact that we still fail to realize that the demand and supply need to come close to each other, and they are not coming close to each other. And if you don't, then I don't know what policy is going to do. If you have $10 million today and you want to invest it in Nigeria, answer this question for me: Are you not going to be constrained by the insecurity of your life and your property? 2, you are going to be constrained on whether indeed you'll be able to repatriate your profit. 3, you're going to be worrying about so many other variables to make you decide what other options. If you put it in portfolio, what kind of interest are you going to get, and how does that interest compare with inflation that is 18.6%? You're not going to get 20% interest so that you can say, well, it's higher than 18.6. It's tough. And then what are your alternatives? Why don't you take your money back to where you got it from, which is in dollar, and leave it in dollar and let it give you a higher interest? Because they have higher inflation, they normalize their policy. So they have options. That investor has options. But that options are not available right now in the country because until we get our RT 200 billion operational, then you can begin to balance it. You can now see that Naira can actually go down to 200 Naira to $1 because we have 200 billion coming in from foreign or operations. But we haven't got there yet. And we need investment to even move there. Anywhere you want to go, there must be investment. You want to reduce overhead, there must be investment. Reduce staff, there must be investment. All those reports, Rasanya, you can't do anything unless you have an investment. You need investment to fight corruption, to fight insecurity. You need investment. You got to find the money. And I haven't seen that we are talking about how to get that easy cash. And then we are not looking at the elephant in the room that is doing direct crude swap, carrying all the crude away to some people abroad to refine, and they're coming back and telling the government that you have under recovery, that what is cost us to bring in PMS is 500 billion every month, higher than what we are supposed to get from selling the crude. Nobody wants to look at the elephant in the room, and nobody wants to talk about 5 million farmers that got loan with no collateral and producing the food we are eating today. The price of a bag of rice would have been 70,000 naira if what has happened in Uncle Borowa's program didn't happen. If you had relied on Ministry of Agriculture in the states and federal to dent the figure, it would not have happened. It is this program that put food on our table and people are not dying. Now, more people would have died of poverty and hunger than all the people killed by conflict and COVID-19. But nobody's looking at that. Nobody worries about 4 trillion to 6 trillion that is going to be spent as subsidy, borrowed to be consumed and dropped into a dark hole. Nobody talks about that. All people are talking about is CBS should stop intervening in agriculture. Stop that. What is the alternative? We just don't have the alternative. That's my feeling. We don't have the alternative.
All right. Professor Ken Ife, development economist, who joined us via Zoom from London. I'd like to thank you for being part of this program. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. Back here in the studio, Dr. Kaide Okwefa. What should citizen Nigerian do?
Let me first say, I want to align more with a lot of the submission by Professor Kenife on certain things that are currently being done by government that is not being appreciated, and we need to do more. Number one, what do you want the citizens to do that to remain patriotic? The more important thing to be done will be from the side of government and the organized private sector. We need to play the games in the right way. We need to fix our refinery. Whichever way we want to get it fixed, we need to produce our own, we need to refine our own crude so that we reduce the impact of foreign currency in our economy. Number two, we need to call on the National Assembly to look at what the governors have proposed and borrow a leaf from what happened in America in the last few days, where they sat down, negotiated between 50-50 Senate, and they were able to come out with a piece of legislation, though waiting for the Congress concurrence, that would make life better for the average American. Then the third thing we also need to do, we need to call on the agencies of government, especially the security agencies. They need to beef up. They need to improve on what they are doing, especially those by our borders. We can't keep paying subsidy on products that are not consumed by Nigeria. Then lastly is to appeal to Nigerians to slow down the issue of false narratives, especially on security matters. A lot of things we put on the social media on security issues that are not correct, and we keep circulating. If you are not sure of the source, please don't circulate it, because this creates panic and it affects the economy at the same time.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Kayode Okbefa, mobility expert, Executive Director, Center for Sustainable Mobility and Access Development. Thank you for being part of this discussion. Yes. Thank you. And for the closing comments, we go to Dr. Buda Yusuf, former Director General, Lagos Chamber of Commerce, in just 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, what the citizens should do, we're in a democracy. And democracy is not just about voting, it's about participation, it's about demanding for accountability. So as citizens, we need to be more involved in the democratic process beyond the elections. We're able to hold our leaders accountable at all levels. I think we get better dividend of democracy. Then we need to work a lot more on the quality of our institutions. Institutions, defines the way people behave. It defines the level of compliance with rules and all of that. Unfortunately, the quality of our institutions have been deteriorating over time. So we need to strengthen institutions so that way we can also get the citizens to play a much bigger role in the system. Then we need to be patriotic. And my friend Comrade already mentioned that. Then the security agencies have been talking about citizen support to tackle this problem of insurgency, kidnapping, terrorism, and so on and so forth. As much as possible as citizens, we should support our security agencies with information that can help them to deliver a lot more in the area of this fight against terrorism and insurgency. Because without security, there's very little that anyone can do, either in business or elsewhere. Then we should ensure that we have a much better investment environment for everybody, including the SMEs, the informal sector people, the artisans. Let the environment be more conducive for them to be able to function, to be able to create jobs, and let us give them a sense of belonging as Nigerians. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Dr. Buda Yusuf, former Director General, Lagos Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for being part of our discussion tonight. Thank you. And rounding off, Alhaji Idris Faibu Mikati, your closing comments in just another 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Stoba, once again. Just quickly, number one, the issue of selling shares of NNPC is not something that is a quick fix. As an investment banker, you can't achieve that within 6 months, maybe a minimum 1 year, 18 months thereabout. Number two, let me correct the wrong impression. The issue of CBN intervention, to the best of my knowledge and belief, is wrong, and I fundamentally disagree. Because if you want to do anchor borrower scheme, you want to intervene in agriculture. Why do we have the Bank of Agriculture? If you want to intervene in aviation or any manufacturing sector, why don't you go through Bank of Industry? Why do we have infrastructure bank if you want to intervene in aviation or other sector. So central bank needs not to dabble into the areas that it is not mandated to dabble. The CBN Act is clear about its functions and what it's supposed to do. What is happening today is an aberration. Fast forward, what should we do? Fundamentally, two things. On the part of the civil servants, they need to be more nationalistic. They need to be patriotic. They need to have human feelings. They need to have fear of God in trying to help those in authority as politicians. To us Nigerians, we need to also be patriotic. We need to look at made in Nigeria and dress in items that are produced in Nigeria. I'm using a brocade that is produced in Nigeria. The cap is produced in Nigeria. Why do we, for example, the report from Kano, somebody is saying open the borders to import rice. Must we eat rice? Must we eat foreign rice? So let us be patriotic. Let us be nationalistic. Let us have some level of empathy that this country belongs to us. I think with this, we will have a better and virile country that we will all be proud of, and our children and great-grandchildren will be proud of us for the sacrifices we have made for this country. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Alhaji Idris Shuaibu Mikati, Chairman, Institute of Directors, Center for Corporate Governance, and a fellow Institute of Directors. Thank you for being part of this discussion. You joined us from our Lagos Network Center. As I always say, no one program can exhaust all the issues, so we must leave this conversation. And thank you too for being part of it all. And thanks to all our guests. And next week, we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stover. Continue to stay safe.